Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the April 2nd, 2013 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. We have copies of our agenda on either side of the room tonight. If you haven't already done so, I would invite you to please pick up a copy and follow along with our proceedings. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our agenda tonight, as well as a section for comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not on our agenda tonight. And so during that segment of the meeting, I would welcome hearing from anyone who has questions or comments of a general nature. It is customary for us to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this time, I invite everyone in the room to please stand and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Rankin? Here. Commissioner Barnett? Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner Schnell?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here, thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, minutes of prior council meetings that we have to review and adopt tonight. We have one set of minutes for our consideration, and those are our minutes from our regular council meeting of March 19th, 2013. Are there any questions, comments, corrections, or changes to those minutes from any members of the council? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Those minutes are approved. Thank you. Now, as promised, that brings us to item 4 on our agenda, public comments of a general nature. This is the segment of the meeting where we entertain comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not on our agenda tonight. So if there are any residents or guests who would like to make a comment of a general nature, we invite you to please come down to the podium. The protocol is to give us your name and address, and we would welcome hearing from you. So if there are any questions or comments of a general nature, please come down. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Tully. Good evening, council members. First of all, I'd like to thank Commissioner Barnett, Commissioner Schnell for serving the village of Downers Grove so well. And I'd like to thank the candidates that are running for this election. I went to the forum, and I could easily vote for any one of the 6 candidates. So thank you very much. My name is George Swimmer. I'm at 4905 Main Street. That's my office. I've been involved in railroad safety for almost 20 years. I've investigated accidents. I've testified in front of congressional committees regarding railroading and railroad safety. I've been involved with the Belmont Underpass Task Force. So I'm fairly knowledgeable about railroads and railroad activity and how they flow through Downers Grove. I work on the north side of the tracks. I live on the south side of the tracks. I'm constantly going back and forth, back and forth. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the railroading in Downers Grove, how it could possibly be improved. I was going to work the other morning, and traffic was stopped on Main Street. I'm going down Main Street. I'm going northbound, and there's emergency vehicles, so I know something's wrong. I see the ambulance around Forest Avenue. I walk over there towards where the ambulance is. I see the police officers. I see the emergency responders there. I knew it was a tragedy. I could tell almost immediately. And I guess my condolences are in order to the family, to the of the young man that was killed, to the first responders. I'd like to thank them for their efforts, and I know it was a tragedy that really had an emotional impact not only on them but on the village as a whole. Today is National Autism Day. The young man that was killed, it's my understanding, had autism. He went through the Downers Grove school district 58, and then school district 99. So he was one of us. I've investigated a number of accidents along the Burlington Northern, pedestrian accidents, and a lot of them are with the people. When I say a lot, I'm talking about 4, okay? Like that 5. People with special needs, blind people, people with cognitive type problems. So railroading, these railroad tracks I think for people with special needs are exceptionally dangerous. Right now, there's about 200 trains a day that go up and down the Burlington Northern line. Early on, at one of our railroad safety meetings, I'm a member of the DuPage Railroad Safety Council, one of the locomotive engineers, and I think it was the safety director for Metro at the time, said second train accidents, they just cause so many tragedies. People think that the gates are down for one train, and the train either goes by or it's stopped in the station, and they attempt to cross the tracks even though the gates are down. They're looking at that one train, and then all of a sudden, either coming from behind that train or coming from another direction, a second train accident occurs. Train traffic is increasing almost on a daily basis. Warren Buffett bought the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. This company bought the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad because train traffic is increasing. And it's increasing, I think I heard estimates like 20% in the next 15 years. So there's going to be more and more trains. The trains are going to be slower, they're going to be longer. That's almost a given. So there's going to be more and more accidents. We had somebody killed November of 2011 on Main Street. So it's, you know, it's starting to happen. The Class 1 carriers, those are the big carriers, the big freight companies, they always have two people in the locomotive compartment. They have the engineer and a conductor. So either one of them could stop the train, could blow the whistle, could warn the other one, could call, they call the other one the different signal aspects so they know that the signals are correct. And the argument by the Brotherhood of Locomotive and Trainmen is that 4 eyes are better than 2. In Los Angeles, Metrolink, after a major accident, they decided they were going to put 2 people in the locomotive compartment. The Metro only has 1 person in the locomotive compartment. Metro trains are involved in an extremely high number of accidents. The locomotive engineer on a Metro train typically works the morning rush hour shift, takes some time off, and works the evening rush hour shift. So he's normally working about a 70-hour week. Fatigue is one of the most prominent contributing factors. There's usually a number of contributing factors in any accident, but fatigue usually is one of the contributing factors. It's estimated in about 1/3 of transportation accidents. So not only do we have one locomotive engineer, but we have one locomotive engineer that is not bringing his A game all the time. I mean, it's just impossible to work that many hours and be alert and responsive. The Burlington Northern tracks Metro has 11 different routes running through the Chicago area. The Burlington Northern, in my estimation, and in the estimation of other people involved in railroad safety, is probably one of the most dangerous. The other 10 routes have something called a layback rule. If there's a train in the station, a commuter train in the station or exiting the station, the train that's coming to the station has to lay back, and you can only proceed through that station very cautiously. That was recently changed on the Union Pacific West Line at about 8 of the stations, where they have all kind of second train warning devices. They have visual second train warning devices. They have audio second train warning devices. That if there's a second train in the area, it'll announce there's a second train in the area. Commuters are channeled behind the warning gates just so that they don't walk in front of the warning gates. It's so often the case, and we see it all the time at Main Street. We see it at the Fairview Station. Belmont, we have an underpass there now, so that's no longer a problem. So the Burlington Northern they just highball through these stations going 60, 70 miles an hour, irregardless of whether there's a second train there or not. They just don't seem to care. Many years ago, I contacted the FRA, Federal Railroad Administration, and I mentioned it to him, whoever I talked to, and I got his name in my office in the files. And he said, oh yeah, they were told some time ago by the locomotive engineers on the Burlington Northern how dangerous it was, but they really can't step in because that's a railroad operating rule. They can't really get involved in that. So the Burlington Northern does not have this layback rule. These stations are so dangerous, it's unbelievable. There's no second train warning device. There's a very subtle second train warning device on the Burlington Northern Santa Fe that nobody knows about. And it's if the chimes are on, there's a train in the area. If the chimes go off, there's only one train in the area. If the chimes start again, there's a second train in the area. But people just don't know about it. Also, I just got a couple more items I want to touch on. There's trains, westbound trains that go by Fairview before they get to Washington. They'll stop, they'll turn around, and they'll go back into the city. They'll trigger all the gates at Washington, at Main Street, and sometimes at Forest down. They'll never go across there. The train will never cross those intersections because it'll turn around and go back. These false warnings, these false gates, give people a tendency to ignore the real situation if there's a second train coming. Those are very dangerous. Metro knows about it, the Burlington Northern knows about it, they continue to operate like that. In the morning at Fairview, there's a train, not one train, but many trains, that's the first stop in the morning to head downtown. They stop for a long period of time. As a matter of fact, the conductors on that train often go to the, when I was there, the White Hen, it's the 7-Eleven now, to get coffee. Those trains stop at the station, people think the gates are down for that, they cross, and it's a very dangerous situation. So one of the candidates at the forum said, well, we should improve safety at these crossings before we talk about building grade separation. I agree with him. We should talk about safety and improving safety. And somebody should talk to the Burlington Northern. Somebody should talk to Metro. I've tried talking to them. I've gotten nowhere. So maybe somebody within our council, maybe somebody who hears about this on the local cable TV. I've actually written Warren Buffett, but I got no response. So anyways, thank you very much for your service to our community. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Swimmer. And obviously, train accidents have been in the news lately, with 3 fatalities occurring within the span of about a week along the BNSF in as many different towns. A couple things just to point out. There was a individual that approached us earlier about the issue, which I've witnessed myself as a frequent commuter, where the trains will park and trigger all the gates, and after a while people get antsy. We spoke about it to some degree here, and there was some communication between village staff and BNSF and Metro, and there has been some improvement in that regard. So we're going to keep our eyes on that issue, because while certainly impatience is no excuse for disobeying the law and disobeying your own personal safety, it's human nature, and we see people get impatient and cross when they shouldn't. And to the extent that that temptation can be removed, we obviously have been keeping our eye on that. We'll continue that avenue of communication. The other thing I want to point out is, speaking of your favorite topic, grade separations, Commissioner Durkin and I were at a City Club luncheon not too long ago where the executive director of Metro was the featured speaker, Mr. Alex Clifford. And a couple things of note. One, in his presentation highlighting accomplishments of Metro in the recent past, he highlighted the Belmont Avenue grade separation project. But afterwards, Commissioner Durkin and I went up to him and introduced ourselves and asked a question about, given all the other financial challenges that Metro is facing, and the gist of his speech at that meeting was, before we can start looking about building new things, we need to maintain what we have. They have a lot of crumbling infrastructure. I basically said to him what I thought was rather rhetorically, well, given what you said about the lack of resources, I doubt very much that there'll ever be an opportunity to have a grade separation project again where the safety factors indicate it would be warranted. And at least in a casual comment, he said not necessarily, because safety is very important, and there's always the possibility of perhaps federal dollars become available. But as we know, the last grade separation project was around $60 million. Those kind of dollars aren't easy to come by, but at least I wanted to share that with you, because it gave a ray of hope that it may not be completely impossible in our lifetime.
Okay, a couple things, or a few things we have going in our favor. One is we have Good Sam Hospital, which is a level 1 trauma center. We have ambulances from not only Downers Grove, from neighboring communities south of Downers Grove that are constantly waiting at the train tracks. Also, the Illinois Commerce Commission Railroad Safety Section has a trust fund for railroad safety improvements in the millions of dollars. I think it's like $31 million a year they collect. They've already budgeted out for the next 5 years. There's several grade separations involved in that. One, I believe, is at Irving Park in Benson, I think it's Bensonville, where it's the track bed has been raised. So there's opportunities out there to do this. And I've talked about it a number of times about a plan to raise the track bed at Forest, Maine, in Washington that was developed 60, 65, 70 years ago by the DuPage County Board and the Cook County Board. But nothing's going to happen unless somebody makes it happen. And unfortunately, the village council, for whatever reason, hasn't, I think, in my opinion, and you know, I respect the village council tremendously, hasn't put forth a best effort like a best effort was put forth at Belmont. We haven't even talked about it, to my knowledge. You may have had a casual conversation with Metra. Carol Doris is a Downers Grove resident. She used to be chairman of the Metra board. She's a wonderful lady. I'm sure she's, you know, she knows some people to talk to. I mean, Patty Belloc, State Representative Patty Belloc. I know her well. She would gladly help us again. She was a primary mover and shaker with Mayor Brian Kudrowski and several others to get the Belmont underpass done. So we have the resources here. We've done it before. We know how to do it. We'll get funding. We'll get it. I know we will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Swimmer. Good evening. Other questions or comments of a general nature?
Good evening.
They don't have to deal with trains.
And the rest of the council. My husband-to-be and I live at 902 Stockley Road. There's some townhomes, and at one of the streets in our cul-de-sac, it is an ending of a cul-de-sac, and we were shortchanged on, you know, the driveway length, and we don't have really any place to park our vehicles. We do have permission from an owner that has bought a lot until they start building, which they're going to start building in the spring. And we were just wondering if there was anything. We have written to the council before, and they had came out and looked at it and told us, you know, between 2 and 4, you know, you can't park on the streets. But we can't afford a $20 ticket every single day to park our vehicles in front of our house. So we were just, you know, wondering or asking if there's anything that, you know, you can help us out with.
Well, thank you for bringing this up. Certainly, we can take a look at it and see whether there are any options. We'd have to confer with staff about what the specifics are. I have a general envisionment, if that's a word. I just made one up. A general vision in my mind as to what your circumstances. Yes, what your circumstances are. But
it's right by the Lyman stop sign or stoplight.
Right, but yes. I'd have to look at it and see what other factors are involved in conjunction with our staff.
You know, because we had even talked to the police and everything to see if there was like permits or something that we could pay for that we could allow to be parked at the end of the cul-de-sac.
These things are always more complicated than they appear. I'll say that to you, but we'll take a look at it and see if there are any options in conjunction with staff that might be available.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Councilman.
Other questions or comments of a general nature? Please, come up to the podium, give us your name and address, and we'd love to hear from you. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor and council members, back in 1991, I stood here with the same problem that we have tonight. At that time, Marilyn Schnell was here. I presented to Mayor Chevers 545 petitions to get some kind of relief where the people in my area could exit out to Ogden Avenue.
Excuse me, sir, can I just, I don't mean to interrupt you, but can you give us your name and address, please? Your name and address, please.
Oh, I'm August Campagna, 4227 Northcott Avenue.
Thank you. It's important for the record. I apologize for interrupting you.
Since then, I have been contacted I've contacted the Senate, I've contacted people down in Springfield, I've dealt with IDOT, and from what I got from IDOT was that we needed to kill someone there before they would put a signal. There are certain warrants. One of them was to have someone killed there. We needed to have 5 accidents there in 1 year. They told me I had to exit 200 cars out of Downers Drive in 1 hour. And I was a stock car back when I was a kid. And I'll tell you, when I pull out of Burlington Highlands, I use all my expertise to get out of there safely. There are so many near misses at that corner. Now, back at that time when I approached IDOT, they told me the reason that there was not a signal go there on Downers Drive was the fact that it was too close to Saratoga. Well, that's kind of hogwash, because back in Lyle, there's a T intersection in Lyle at by the Popeyes store there. And it goes into a direct T. There are no businesses on the south side of that T. And just 1/10 of a mile from that light, there was another traffic signal. Now, the distance from Belmont to Saratoga is just under a mile. The distance from Saratoga to Downers Drive is just under a half mile. I see no reason why we cannot get some relief to get out of our area safely. You have to understand, our area is unique. Our area is an island of 200 plus people, 200 plus homes, and we're an island. The only exit we have is onto Ogden Avenue. Unfortunately, we have no other way except to go out through the back roads, up through Orchard Brook, to get to a traffic signal where we can get out safely. But then we have to come back south to get onto Ogden Avenue. Now, I feel as taxpayers, we deserve some kind of relief so that we can exit out of there safely. And I'm approaching you and hoping that you will do something to put some pressure on it. Now, when Mayor Cheevers was here, there was some conversation to me that the village was willing to do something, but it was up to IDOT. Mm-hmm. Well, the village needs to put some pressure on IDOT and let them know what the situation is there. Now, back in 1991, a traffic count there on Ogden Avenue at 3 o'clock in the afternoon was 1,776 cars that passed through there. In 1995, at 3 o'clock, there were 2,577 cars that passed that intersection. Now today, you have more hazards in the fact that Downers Grove has put in a right turn lane on Downers Drive. And the fact is, if you have a person in a right turn lane trying to make a right turn lane, invariably you've got 4 or 5 people lined up trying to make a left turn onto Ogden. And if you're watching down on the east side and you see that you have a clear shot to get into the turning lane, invariably someone decides they're going to make a left turn down Downers Drive, and you cannot see them because of the car that's in the right turn lane trying to make a right turn. Now, you've got businesses since 1991. You've got businesses, you've got Steak and Shake on the corner. You've got a small efficiency center there. You've got the apartment building across the street. You've got businesses in the apartment building. You've got a car wash place. And in there, twice, I've tried to pull out. I've had a clear shot to pull out to go east, and someone was whipping out of the car wash place into the center lane and almost have a head-on. Now, it's a dangerous situation, and I implore you to do something about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming, Mr. Campagna. I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I know that you and I had a chance to chat about this a little bit beforehand. Allow us, it's sort of similar to what I said before, allow us to look at the history in conjunction with staff and what the obstacles are, what the challenges are, what the opportunities might be, and follow up with you if we can. We'll definitely be happy to take a look at it. The other thing I want to mention is I've just been thinking about it, going back to Mr. Swimmer's comments. Because I know, Mr. Swimmer, you've spoken on this point a number of times, both before and after I was mayor. And if the question is there a meeting that can be pulled together at which it can be determined whether there might be sufficient support for some kind of further action, because I think that's the key question. The engineering, as I've been amazed at Belmont, can be accomplished, but it's the support and the resources that are the key thing. I'd be happy to go on a joint communication with you if you think it would be of help to whatever list we come up with of people you think might be supportive of the effort, and let's see where it goes. As some might say, let's light the fuse and see what happens. So I'll be happy to talk with you about that offline.
Thank you very much, sir.
Any other questions or comments of a public nature? I'm sorry, they're all of a public nature. Any other questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight? Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I live in Downers Grove by Prentice Creek on around Woodward and 63rd, and I had actually brought a picture today. What the town is doing so far, from what I can see, and plus I talked to one of the consultants, is they're letting all the dirt that's coming from the east to settle in the west right in front of our homes where the creek is. And then they're taking dirt and they're just putting it on top of the dirty dirt and garbage and just planting seeds. We went to a meeting and we were told that the town wants to do this the cheapest way possible. They don't want any water. They'll have 2 feet of water. And basically, if you like the color green, you're going to love this project. It's an eyesore. It's disgusting. And I don't understand why they would take all that dirt and just shove it in our backyards.
What are you talking about? The resident is speaking to the Kensington Pond Naturalization Project, which is a pond jointly owned by the village and I believe the adjacent homeowners association. There's some concern about the design of the naturalization of that we've talked to this resident on a couple of occasions. We will continue to do so and see if we can address her concerns. However, at the end of the day, it's a naturalization of an existing pond, much like the Valley View Pond.
You know, and there's things in the document that I read that was an 88-page document that's not true. They're saying that the creek was only 2 feet, and that's not true. I've talked to the residents. They've actually fished in that pond, and there was another resident about 5 years ago that thought that their child was missing and got scared. The police was there and actually walked through the pond, and it came up to her neck. So I don't understand how they can use this as a dumping ground and basically say, it's yours, it's your responsibility after we're done. You guys are going to be the ones to clean it up because I'm in a townhouse, and that's basically the way it is. And I would think that we would care about all the residents in our town and be treated a little bit more respectfully. Thank you.
Well, we certainly do, and thank you for expressing those comments. And I wanted to turn to Mr. Fieldman because we have received, and the whole council's received, communications along these lines with respect to this naturalization project. The project is ongoing.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so it's not finished yet, and it is a naturalization project, which I know from Orchard Brook, where there was one of the first naturalization projects that were undertaken in this area. Maybe not the first, but a early one. And it is a process. So I don't think you can look at it, especially right now when it's still quote unquote under construction, and judge it for what it's going to be, number one. But if there are issues that you have concerns about, I know staff will continue to work with you.
Well, I did speak to Mr. Freeman, and the last thing
It's
he said-
Fieldman, actually, but...
I'm sorry, Mr. Freeman. He basically said, we don't care, we're doing what we're going to do, and do you have any more
I
questions?
highly doubt that he said
I swear
that.
that's about the end of the conversation. He was upset that I had the documents. But, you know, it's just that, do we have any permits for anything that's going on, for them taking all that dirt and putting it over there right now?
Well, excuse me one second. The project is ongoing, and it's a naturalization of a pond. The land will continue to be owned by, and the village will continue to be responsible for it going forward if it's like the other projects.
I'd like to consult our notes and talk with our public works director on the details of this
Okay,
actual,
well-
because there's some multiple landowners there now, I know.
As I said before, these things are always more complicated than one thinks.
See that Kensington's the only one that owns it. We did sign permission from Beverly Glen for them to have access because they were doing experimental planting, which was nice at first because we were told we were going to have a wet restoration, a water restoration, but now we were told basically we're having a shoreline restoration, which is like a stabilization, so they're going to try and get rid of as much water as possible and just throw a lot of greenery there. But all the stuff they planted so far, I have a picture, it's just all dead. And according to the paperwork, they're just going to be looking through this until next year. They're going to be, how long are they going to be monitoring this?
Why don't we take all your questions and the issues that you've raised, which we
Okay.
appreciate you bringing to us, get the background and the information, which unfortunately I don't have at my fingertips.
Okay.
Because we don't want to just give you a knee-jerk response. I'd rather give you an informed one that's based in what we know to be true. But with any of these projects, obviously we're not trying to spend tons of money because one of our
Exactly. Yeah, I
obligations is
understand
to be good stewards of the tax dollar on
Right.
behalf of the entire community.
Exactly.
So we're
I
trying to do the
understand that
project
totally.
appropriately
Right.
within a reasonable amount of dollars.
Right.
Because it's not just that neighborhood, it is the entire community that we have to be concerned with.
Exactly, and I understand that. But at the same token, our meetings have been closed door. I asked if I can tape record our last conversation for our last meeting. We weren't allowed to. I noticed that Valley View Pond has all their answers and questions on their website, on Downers Grove website. I asked if we can do that, and I believe I sent you an email and a couple of the employees the email. If you guys can do that for us as well. I never received a response or not on
We can
that.
certainly look at whether there are a number of issues that have been raised by you and your neighbors about this project, and as part of a FAQ, or here's what's happening, I'm sure we can do something like that, but we'll look into it. And again, I don't have the information at my fingertips to be able to give you a precise, informed answer, which is what you deserve. So if you can give us the opportunity to maybe follow up with staff, I know what some of the issues are from prior correspondence and some of those that you've raised tonight, and see if we can follow up on some of these things.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'll agree with that. I'm actually a homeowner as well in that area.
Please, if you just give us your name and address.
My name is Cynthia DiGiacomo, and I live at 1941 Looms Avenue. I'm actually the homeowner.
Good evening.
I was also at this meeting, and it was, I do want two things cleared, that they did state that the town wants us to stay away from acknowledging that it's a dam, and it was originally a dam, and that at the end of this project, that the Beverly Glen, who has never owned this project, will be the owners of this. And I'm part of the board, and we have never agreed to owning any property that belongs to the town of Downers Grove, or to whomever it belongs to. It's never on any of our property.
Well, thank you for pointing that. We'll include that with the earlier ownership questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to items of a general nature regarding matters not appearing on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, then we will move to item 5, public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so we will go straight to our consent agenda. We have a number of items on our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items listed on the consent agenda? Any questions or comments from members of the village council with respect to any of the items on the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I just want to point out, resolution, or item D, which is the resolution authorizing agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation for the replacement of traffic signals on certain state highways. If you recall, when when Community School District 99 was before us talking about the new stoplight by North with the countdown, and my concern was that we didn't have one on Dunham, and we do have one, thanks to everyone who was involved, and one of the members of the staff that emailed me. I just want to point this out. It's funny that I had asked if we had that, and here the state is giving us a grant, and they're going to be changing 10 of those 10 lights on, a total of 10 lights located on Ogden and Butterfield. So we'll have some on Ogden and some on Butterfield with the actual countdown for the pedestrian crossing. So I just wanted to point that out. So it's kind of ironic. Maybe somebody was listening, and maybe, well, Mr. Swimmer left. Maybe somebody from Metro will be watching as well, and we'll get some kind of action. So I just want to point that out. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. It brings us to item 7, our active agenda. And we have no items on the active agenda. I had to look twice just to make sure. This brings us to item 8, which is our first reading or our workshop agenda, where we entertain items that are presented to us for discussion and consideration and for action potentially at a later point in time. And I'm going to be a little nostalgic for a moment because this reminds me of the old days when there were dozens of things on the workshop agenda. We have many items on the workshop or first reading agenda tonight. And as is customary, I'll turn over the first reading agenda to Village Manager David Fieldman for presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. In fact, there are 10 items on tonight's first reading agenda, and you'll see that we are now in the spring season of public works projects. You'll continue to see this amount of activity through the early summer. The first item, though, is consideration of an ordinance amending provisions in our zoning ordinance regarding fences. And here to present this information is our Community Development Director, Tom Daybrine.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. An ordinance has been prepared to adopt an amendment to the fence provisions of the zoning ordinance, which is section 28.1301 of the ordinance as it relates to fences in the front yard of non-residential uses located within the residential zoning districts. We'll try to explain that a little bit better in a couple of minutes here. That the Community High School District 99 is the petitioner for this text amendment. And we're looking for approval on the April 9th, 2013 active agenda. No, I'm not going to read that, and I don't expect you to see it. But this is just an example of what the fence current text in the zoning ordinance looks like for fences, and that's just about half of it. It does continue on. We are focusing on one addition to that section of the ordinance tonight, much larger font this time, adding a single new clause to the existing code. And I want to highlight some of the wording there. For non-residential uses in residential districts, and we'll explain that, fences could be 6 feet tall instead of 4 feet, as long as this is a multi-frontage lot that contains a parking lot without a structure, and it's adjacent to an arterial street or a non-residentially zoned property. And there's other language involved in this, but it's very similar to the other aspects of our fence requirements. I wanted to highlight that. So what does this really mean? What kind of changes are we talking about? Well, in very limited situations, schools and churches may have a 6-foot fence instead of 4-foot fence. And that's really what we're looking at here. So let's talk about a little bit about how this came up. District 99, as I mentioned, is the petitioner for this. They are located about here, just south of Ogden Avenue along Main Street. And the property is actually split with the arterial, which is Main Street, and then highlighting there the separation between the residentially zoned property in question and the business property to the north. Here's an aerial of the same location with the parking lot put in place that you would see out there today. There's the parking lot. If this were approved, the fence would be located in that vicinity along Main Street on the left side of that site plan, and then Sherman on the north. It would also include a small site triangle in the northwest corner of that block, which is required in any case. What might it look like? Well, here's a plan, or a fence detail that was presented to us several months ago. It would look something like this, and in fact I can get much more specific, because if you look across the street from the proposed location, it in fact looks like this. There's an existing 6-foot fence across the street to the west, which is allowed because that is a recreational field practice area, and the 6-foot fence is allowed to prohibit balls and people, I guess, from heading east into the traffic. So this would mimic that design, assuming that this is all approved. That is, by the way, an open design fence. That's a requirement throughout the village. We require at least one open space for every 2 vertical elements that are closed or boarded. This is more than that. So it's a very open design and look. With the amendment, there are some other locations in the community that would be eligible today. I just wanted to point that out. This is a very limited application. One is, of course, Downers Grove North High School, the east parking lot along Main and Sherman, St. Mary of Goffstown parking lot along the west side of Fairview Avenue there, and Eversold Park parking lot along Main Street. Those are the 3 locations that are eligible, would be eligible. They're all eligible for a 4-foot fence today. So the difference that we're really talking about is 4 feet or 6 feet. Be happy to try to answer any questions. And
This petition comes to us after ongoing discussions and working with our partners at District 99. It would complete the improvements to North High that we talked about many months ago. And I think the amendment and the likely resulting fence are consistent with the safety issues that were brought up by the council and District 99 leadership several months ago during the previous conversation. District 99 leadership is also here if you have any questions for the petitioner.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments with respect to this item from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Schnell.
Just, Tom, to clarify, the reason a 6-foot-high fence can be put on Sherman, I understand Main Street, but Sherman is because the funeral home is a commercial property as opposed to, it's actually designated commercial property, not a special use in residential district.
correct. And that's actually consistent with other aspects of our code, where we look for a better transition between residential and business uses in general. So a taller fence would be acceptable in general. This happens to be one of those cases. There's a street in between, but it is a business zoning versus the residential zoning classification that distinguishes this area.
And St. Mary's and Eversold would only be, in the case of St. Mary's, Fairview, in the case of Eversold, Main Street. So whatever abuts residential could only be the 4-foot-high fence, if indeed they would even do it. It's just,
correct.
They would be eligible for it.
The 4-foot fence eligibility remains
right.
in place for those locations, but the 6-foot fence could be installed along the arterial streets, which is Fairview and
I mean, just
Main
I think
Street.
so residents understand how far this could expand and that they don't see St. Mary of Goffstown and all of a sudden think they're going to have a 6-foot-high fence all around the parking lot or something like that. And then the last thing, and I think, Dave, we talked about this today, in the original proposal, when we talked about the parking lot, there was an idea of putting a gate or some sort of ingress or egress in the middle of the fence in order to be able to cross Main Street in the middle of the block. It's my understanding, because this came about because they wanted safety for the kids and not being able to climb over a 4-foot fence, that there will be no gate allowed in the middle, that it will just be a solid fence all the way down Main Street?
That's our understanding. In working with the district and trying to design both the parking lot improvements and the potential fence improvements, they are not going to propose any gates. The idea is to funnel all pedestrians to the signalized intersection.
Okay. And the triangles will be at each corner or just certain corners? The sight distance triangles?
Right. The triangle only needs to be at the southeast corner of Main and Sherman. That's where the fences would be perpendicular and meet.
The 2 6-foot.
There is sufficient distance. Along Sherman, for example, the fence would stop at the driveway, which is to the east. It doesn't get all the way to the corner. Similarly, at Main and Grant, it stops short. And in fact, that's the goal, is to direct all the pedestrians from the parking lot to that crossing there. So there is no need in either of those cases. Sight triangle is required at Sherman and Main.
Okay, great, thanks.
Other questions of the council? Commissioner Barnett?
I don't necessarily need an answer tonight, Tom, but I'd like if you guys could kind of reflect on the 1 to 2 definition of open. I know that appears on the 4-foot fences, but 4-foot fences, of course, are pretty easy to see over. And it doesn't take much of an incident angle to suddenly have a 1 to 2 be pretty much a block wall. And so I guess I'd like to hear you guys kind of think about that and digest it a little bit, whether or not that ought to be opened up when we raise the height to 6 feet.
We can take a
Sure.
look at that. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions, Commissioner Neustadt?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a great example, as Manager Fieldman said, of the two municipalities working together to come up with a solution. One of the things I just want to mention is it followed through our normal process, the staffs working together, then through the Plan Commission. Plan Commission had a unanimous vote to approve this, and here we are now at the council. So I appreciate the process. It took a little bit of time to get there, but we're at a good spot. I will be in favor of this text amendment. Actually, I won't be here next week, but I'm still in favor of the text amendment. So sorry, I won't be able to vote on it. But thank you to everybody for all the hard work.
You'll support it in spirit.
That's right.
And
That's right.
thank you for mentioning the Plan Commission. They did deliberate on this and really were very supportive of this change.
And there was public input sought out
Yes.
during the Plan Commission,
Yes.
as we always do.
There
Thank you,
was
Mayor.
even public comment.
Yes.
Commissioner Rankin.
Thank you. I think this is a great safety measure, and I think it's a great exhibition, like you're saying, of us working with 99. I just had a few questions. Was there any feedback received from Adams Winterfield? Are they, that's the funeral home, are they supporting this? I can't see any reason they wouldn't be, but I'm just wondering if we heard from them. Or?
The notification would have reached them, and we had received no comment. So.
Okay. My other thought is, when you mentioned how the fence on the football field is allowed because it's a recreational use, are we concerned at all that St. Mary of Gossen uses that parking lot at Prairie and Fairview as a playground? And could they say that that is a recreational use, and do we need to be careful of how that's worded if that's something we don't want is a 6-foot fence on Prairie? Just a thought.
I don't know. I don't want to have the hearing for them right now, but
I'm just bringing that.
no, and it's a valid point. I think we end up looking at predominant use, and it's an argument that they might want to try to make, but I don't know whether they're even interested.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council on this item? Question I had is probably either for Tom or for our village attorney, and the standards for approval of amendments to the zoning ordinance, particularly text amendments, are in 28-1702. I remember that from 2006 because we didn't have any standards and we added them. I think it's a great idea, but speaking of process, we actually have standards for these sorts of things. And as I mentioned, the standards for approval of amendments either to the text or the map of our zoning ordinance are set forth in 28.1702 of our municipal code, actually 28.1702A for anyone who's scoring at home. The Village Council and the Plan Commission consideration and approval of any amendment, whether text or map, is a matter of legislative discretion that is not controlled by any one standard. However, in making its decisions and recommendations regarding such amendments, the Council shall consider the following factors. So bear with me. 1, the existing uses and zoning of nearby property. In my opinion, I think that weighs in favor of the request. 2, the extent to which the particular zoning restrictions affect property values. I see no indication that there's any adverse or detrimental effect from what is being proposed here, particularly in the way it appears. So I don't see any deleterious impact. 3, the extent to which any determination in property value is offset by an increase in the public health, safety, and welfare. If there was a deleterious effect, I would argue that the clear safety reasons behind this request would certainly offset them. 4, the suitability of the subject property for the zone purposes. I think that's been made pretty clear. 5, this is inapplicable in my opinion, the length of time that the subject property has been vacant as zoned, considering the context of land development in the vicinity. I don't think that applies here, so not applicable. 6, the value to the community of the proposed use. I think that is high. And the last element is 7, the standard of care with which the community has undertaken to plan its land use development. And I would say that we've taken great care, as evidenced in the comprehensive plan and our current efforts to update our zoning ordinance. So in my opinion, all the applicable factors, although there is no one that controls the decision here, I think of the issues that we are supposed to consider, the factors we're supposed to consider in making a decision as to whether or not to make a text or map amendment, which is what is being requested here, that all those factors that do apply are in favor of what's being requested. So I also anticipate being in support of it unless I hear something to the contrary. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Thank you. Next item, please.
The next 3 items concern improvements to our village street system, which has been a focus of ours over the last several years. Here to present all 3 of these street-related items is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Good evening. Item 8B is a request for a motion to award a contract for the Oak Grove Unit 3 reconstruction project to A-Lamp Concrete Contractors, Inc. of Schaumburg, Illinois, in the amount of $1,882,214.50. This project is included in the village's Community Investment Program, the CIP, and is the second of our major street reconstruction projects to be put forward for consideration this year. This project will be funded with proceeds from the $25 million bond issuance that was issuance for the purpose of street reconstruction in the village. This project includes the reconstruction of streets and the replacement of storm sewers and streetlight fixtures within the Oak Grove Unit 3 subdivision, which includes Branding Avenue, Sheldrop Street, Oak Grove Drive, and Frontage Road. This subdivision was built in the mid-'70s with an inadequate pavement design to accommodate the existing traffic, which is currently in this area, and is deteriorating rapidly. Reconstruction of the streets in the subdivision will provide better performing pavement and reduce maintenance costs. A call for bids was issued and 5 bids were received. A-Lamp Concrete Contractors was the low bidder, and they have satisfactorily completed comparable projects for local communities, including road replacement and underground utilities for Bartlett, Skokie, and Lombard. A-Lamp was also the contractor that successfully completed the Valley View road reconstruction project for the village in 2012. And staff recommends award of this contract to A-Lamp Concrete Contractors. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments on this item from members of the public? Questions or comments from Village Council? No questions or comments. Thank you. Next item, please.
I'd like to present the next 2 items together. They're related road maintenance items. They are items 8C and 8D, which include a motion to award a contract for the 2013 Resurfacing A project to Central Blacktop Company of LaGrange, Illinois, in the amount of $1,918,509.63, and a motion to award a contract for the 2013 Preventative Seal and Parking Lot Improvement Project to SKC Construction of Elgin in the amount of $280,038.89. These 2 contracts are components of the 2013 Road Maintenance Program, which is identified in the CIP as ST004, and also includes the 2013 Resurfacing B contract, which you'll see shortly, as well as pavement patching and the proposed hot in-place recycling on Lacey Road and Authority Drive, which you'll also see later this year. The 2 contracts on tonight's agenda include resurfacing on streets shown. We have an exhibit. Maybe we'll see if we can get that on here. We have an exhibit to show which streets they are. They're also shown on the village's website on an interactive map, which residents can click on the streets and get more details about all of this work. Residents will receive communication from us in advance of work starting and will be invited to sign up for e-news to receive construction updates as work progresses. In addition to this work, we'll also be reconstructing one half block segment of Chase. Here's the segments here shown in red on our, this is the same map, similar to the map that residents would see on our website. As I said, we'll also be reconstructing a 1/2 block of Chase south of Maple, which is identified in the CIP as ST043. By combining it with this road work, we were able to obtain better prices for this work. All of this work was identified in the village's roadway plan, which is a tool we use to systematically assess the condition of every street in the village and manage our maintenance in a way that maximizes our road conditions. Our goal is to get all of the streets in the village in a good condition where they can be cost-effectively maintained. 4 bids were received for the 2013 resurfacing A contract, and Central Blacktop Company was the low bidder. Central Blacktop satisfactorily completed the village's 2006, 2007, and 2012 resurfacing contracts, and staff recommends award of this contract to Central Blacktop Company. The 3 bids were received for the 2013 preventative seal and parking lot improvement project, and SKC Construction was the low bidder. They completed the preventative seal project for the village in 2005 and performed as a subcontractor on a project for the downtown business district in 2008. All work was completed in a satisfactory manner. We've also received positive references from them from other communities, including Oak Brook, Carroll Stream, Plainfield, and Riverside. And staff recommends award of this contract to SKC Construction. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this item from members of the audience? Questions or comments from the village council with respect to this item? No questions or comments. Next item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The next 4 items are all contracts related to improvements to our water distribution system, and Nan will also present these items.
Thank you. Item 8E is a request for a motion to award a contract for the 2013 Water Main Improvement Contract A to Trine Construction Corporation of West Chicago, Illinois, in the amount of $1,338,465.50. The purpose of this project is to replace water mains that have reached or are reaching the end of their useful life, or where we have experienced a higher number than average of water main breaks. And is funded by bond proceeds that were issued for this work in the village. This contract consists of the replacement of approximately 4,500 feet of water main, 69 new residential and commercial services, sidewalk and driveway removal and replacement, and parkway restoration. There are 4 street segments included in this work: 41st Street from Highland to Lindley Street, Main Street, Maple Avenue to Summit, Florence Avenue from 2nd Street to 5th Street, and Cumner Road from 4th Street to 55th Street. And these segments are also included on the website on the village's interactive capital map. All these locations will be patched and resurfaced as part of one of the 2 village street maintenance contracts this year. 9 bids were received, and Trine Construction was the low bidder. They have satisfactorily completed comparable projects for local communities, including Roselle, Glen Ellen, and Broadview, and staff recommends this award of this contract to Trine Construction Corporation.
Thank you. Questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Questions from the village council. Commissioner Schnell.
Just listening to the street from 41st Street from Highland to Lindley, that's the ingress to Highland School. So and that's where all the parents go to pick up the kids, and if there's a way we can communicate to the school what is happening, when it's happening, and work out a plan to notify the parents of this, because my guess is it's going to be ripped up and there may be some frustrations. So the more communication we can get to the school and to the parents, I think the better off we're going to be. My guess is this is not going to be done over the summer when school is not in session.
We will do everything we can do to minimize issues with...
No, I'm sure you will. It's just communicating to the school is the best thing we can do. So, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? No further questions. Next item, please.
Item 8F is a request for a motion to authorize the award of a contract to Chicagoland Paving Contractors for the 2013 pavement patching services in the amount of $114,900. This is the work that we perform on streets and parkway repairs for concrete and asphalt, where we do water main digs for water main breaks primarily, and other type of utility work that happens in the right-of-way. It's happened from last fall through the winter and early spring, so we'll be coming through with this work and repairing all those digs that were performed. This work is funded from the Water Fund. 3 bids were received, and Chicagoland Paving was the low bidder. They performed the contract in 2009, 2010, and 2011 for the village, and were responsive and met the project specifications, as well as we also received positive references from them from other communities. Staff recommends award of this contract to Chicagoland Paving Contractors.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Lots of infrastructure going on here, folks. Any questions from the audience? Questions from the council? Commissioner Barnett.
Just kind of related to this. I know Commissioner Durkin, I think, has brought this up several times. Have we changed, and I'm just not remembering it, the standards that we put in place or insist on when construction's done? You know, we do construction projects and there's taps, new taps into the water lines. It seems like we see a lot of pavement, you know, I don't want to call it failure, but certainly settling that doesn't fit the way we would do paving if it were redone. Am I making any sense?
I think you're referring to when private construction happens and they make a cut in the street with one of their utilities?
And I know, I think Sean's brought this up several times. Have we done anything to change our requirements on how that patchwork's done?
We have not changed our specifications for that
Okay.
recently, but we are looking at what other communities are doing, and we're looking at other ways that we can reduce the amount of settlement that occurs in those pavement cuts.
There were some changes, I think, that predate NAN that talk about limiting cuts in the road, especially ones that have been recently repaved. Under our control, we're doing everything we can to minimize the cuts and also look at the things Nan just talked about the backfill and paving procedures. There is one complicating factor, and that is the sanitary district, which is a separate governmental entity, which has practices that require sanitary services to be completely removed and replaced when a new house is built, and most of those sanitary sewer taps are very deep and tend to be in the center of the road. We are working with the sanitary district leadership to see what practices are available to minimize the settling that occurs in those situations.
I'm just wondering if it ought to be, if there was any way to make it, you know, our responsibility to fix our street instead of having it done by somebody who's then gone later on. Because it just, the amount of work and effort we're putting in the streets, it's heartbreaking to drive around and see that. You know, you love the development, you love the rework, you love the new facilities, but you hate driving down the road looking at a street that we know is years away from being touched because it's relatively new, that's got all these little depressions in it. I guess I'd like us to think about that long term. If we already are, that's awesome, but maybe we ought to be doing that and billing for it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, they call that traffic calming. At least that's what they do in Hinsdale.
Oh, we got the president calling now.
You ever seen those streets, let me tell you. Yeah, actually, one of the things that we talked about, and I have been talking to Dave about, or the manager Fieldman about this, is possibly of doing an augering, because I know that's what other municipalities are looking at doing, based on the age of the street. But I think that's a great idea. Maybe we're responsible for repairing our own street, because I know that's something when we've had our one-on-ones that hasn't come up. I do have a question in reference to what you're talking about, and I guess it could go in with the stormwater repairs that we've done. I know on 65th, and I think that's Bayberry, or right there by 65th and Duval, we did some testing where our public works crew were doing the repairs of the streets. How did that ever turn out? I mean, did that turn out not to our specifications, or was the time allocation not the best use of time?
I'm not familiar. Are you talking about pavement patching?
Patching. It's right off of, we did it on 65th Street, right by where I'm at, where we had, our public works went out there, we cut the street, we got it ready, and then we went in and we repaved it.
On Berrywood there?
Berrywood, that's the street, yeah. And I know that was a test that we were doing. And it this contract just brought that to my attention.
We'll take a look and get back to you on that.
Yeah.
Other questions? Commissioner Neustadt.
Just a quick comment about Commissioner Barnett's and Durkin's point about us fixing our streets. We have to realize that would be a pretty big service change for us, and manpower and all that. I think that would have to go into the conversation.
I didn't say that right if I meant us. I meant us being responsible for
Well,
having
we have
this
to inspect
contract.
it. We have to, I think, the inspection process has probably improved over the last year or so. If there's a different way to do it, either if it's, boring or whatever else, that's great, but, those cut-ins are, like they've said, I mean, the sanitary lines are deeper than the water lines. The water lines are actually in the parkway most of the time, so we got to be careful about looking at the policy is a great idea. I think we can always do that to try to get better, but just having that, us fixing our streets, somebody might hear that and say that now all of a sudden the village is going to be cutting in their sanitary line, and I don't think that's what we meant.
So a couple of things. One is we're always looking at ways to better maintain and own our street infrastructure, so this is no exception, and this may come up again in the summer during some long-range planning discussions. Second thing is we're now talking about 3 different types of patching. Enza reminded me that on 65th and Berrywood was patched during one summer where we took a shot using in-house crews to do some street patching to fill potholes, basically.
Correct.
It was a little beyond pothole filling, but usually done in the summer and fall sessions. Generally speaking, we did a pretty good job. We learned a lot as we did that, but we found that I think contracting that work out is the most cost-effective and most effective for infrastructure in our community. So that's the first, the street patching for the types of repairs that are needed. The second type of patching is the patching that's done when somebody taps a water line or a sanitary sewer, et cetera, especially when a new house or an addition is going on. That's usually done by the people who pulled a permit, and then we inspect the work. And the third type of pavement patching that we're talking about tonight is when there's a water main break and there's the temporary fix done in the fall or winter or early spring, and then we hire this crew to come back in and do a permanent patch. So 3 different types of patching we're talking about, all of which have the same effect on our streets, and we can look at all 3 to make sure we're doing the best we can.
Then there's the 4th one you mentioned, which is when the sanitary district does it.
Yes, usually associated with a new house too. But yes, another agency just to complicate things.
Right, so to go way off topic here.
We haven't been off topic in a long time.
It's a workshop.
Yeah.
We're allowed.
Thanks.
You're sure. The question is, what are our specifications for when any of those 4 instances occur? And the question is making sure that those specifications are met. So the fair question is whether there's any improvements that can be made in the specifications, but then the other challenge is always, how do you ensure that those specifications are met? And that's when you get into best practices, and I think it's all things that are looked at constantly, and we'll continue to look at them. But as bless you, as suggestions or new information comes out of that process, it's probably worth sharing so that everyone's familiar with it, making sure that our specs are where they should be and that we're doing what we can, even with other taxing bodies, to make sure that those specifications are being met. Believe it or not, next item. Thank you.
Not done yet. There's 2 remaining capital related items, also related to water work, which is items 8G and 8H, which are requests for motions to award contracts for water main construction engineering services. One is to Crawford, Murphy & Tilley of Aurora, Illinois, in the amount of $111,500 for CIP projects WA-028 and WA-018, and to Strand Associates of Joliet, Illinois, in the amount of $66,900 for CIP project WA-039. The village's CIP capital community investment plan for 2013 includes $2,700,000 for water main replacements, including the contract we discussed earlier as one of the 2 contracts throughout the village, and $1 million for new water main construction in a recently annexed area of the village. And that contract will be coming to the council within the next month or so. The construction engineering services included in these 2 contracts provides construction observation and resident engineering services during the construction of this work. The contract with Crawford, Murphy & Tilley will provide services for the water main replacement work, and the contract with Strand Associates will provide the same services for the new water main construction project. The village posted a request for qualifications for water main construction engineering services and pre-qualified 4 of the 18 firms that submitted for this work. All 4 firms submitted proposals for construction engineering services. After reviewing each of their proposals, staff recommends award of these contracts to Crawford, Murphy & Tilley and Strand Associates based on their understanding of the project, their capability to perform the work, their experience with similar projects, and their proposed fees. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about these 2 contracts.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience with respect to items 8G and H, both of which pertain to water main construction engineering services? Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the council with respect to either item? Commissioner Waldeck.
I'll just address all the infrastructure that we're doing tonight. It's a lot of money involved, and it's something that we need to do, and don't take the minimal discussion that we appear to be having over huge amounts of money as some sort of apathy. I mean, these things cost real bucks. I'm sure everybody's done their homework, and for those folks at home, if you're interested, we get emails about the water, the water bills and the funding the revenues that we pulled in for the water fund. And if you go to the website and you click on these items and you go to the end, you find out where the funding is coming from. And like in the last few items, you actually see that this is coming from the water fund, and that's that the meter revenue that we're charging. In addition to the water that we have to pay for from Lake Michigan, that comes through the DuPage Water Commission, comes to us. We need to maintain the infrastructure, and so we bill you for that, and this is where the money's going. So if you want to play the Downers Grove budget home game, that's one way to get involved. So
I hear there's a new edition of that out.
There will be updated. But yeah, I urge people to actually take a look at this stuff, and I don't see a lot of controversy in here, just work that needs to be done, and for a long time as well. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. And it's a good point. A lot of these items we're talking about now are all planned expenditures on much-needed infrastructure, so these do not come as surprises to the Village Council. Any other questions or comments from members of the council with respect to either the water main engineering services projects? Hearing none, I guess we go to 8I.
The next item is consideration of purchase of 4 vehicles for our vehicle fleet, and this also is under Nan's direction, so she will also present this item.
Item 8I is a request to authorize the purchase of 4 replacement vehicles in the amount of $717,429. These vehicles were identified in the village's planned replacement schedule and were thoroughly reviewed by the fleet team, who evaluated the condition, use, repair history, and age, and determined that replacement was more cost-effective than continued operation of these vehicles. After reviewing current operational needs, the Public Works Department is recommending the removal of a 5-ton dump truck from the fleet and replacing 2 1-tons with Ford F-50s. We're basically recommending that 3 existing vehicles, one is a 5-ton and 2 1-tons, be replaced with 2 vehicles, which are both what more considered mid-size trucks. We believe these 2 mid-size trucks will provide more year-round versatility and will be more cost-effective to own and maintain than the current 3 vehicles. These 2 trucks, as well as the proposed cargo van in this group, were specified to run on compressed natural gas, which will reduce fuel costs for the village and provide cleaner and long-lasting vehicles. This proposed purchase of 4 vehicles will result in a savings of $227,571 from the budgeted amount, as well as a rebate from the Illinois EPA for the compressed natural gas of $12,000 to assist with the purchase of these vehicles. Staff is recommending, in summary, the purchase of 2 F-550s trucks from Curry Motors of Frankfort, Illinois, an auto truck of Bartlett, Illinois, through existing cooperative purchasing contracts established by the Northwest Municipal Conference for the amount of $184,224, and the purchase of a Ford CNG E250 cargo van, which was competitively bid. 1 bid was received from Badger Truck Equipment of Milwaukee in the amount of $32,520. And the last vehicle is a 2003 Pierce Saber pumper truck from Global Emergency Products of Aurora, Illinois, also through an existing cooperative purchasing contract established by the Northwest Municipal Conference for the amount of $500,685. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And I just want to chime in that this is a great example of several things we're committed to here at the village. You see the application of lean processes, which result in the downsizing of our fleet. You see environmental sustainability through alternative fuels. And you heard Nan mention purchasing cooperatives, which are partnerships with other governments, which help keep the costs down. So all three things, which are very important to our strategic planning initiatives, are on display here. And there's a great write-up of our efforts to do all three of these things in our vehicle fleet in our budget in the Fleet Maintenance Fund. Now we're happy to answer it.
Good point. You've got examples of cooperation, collaboration, and consolidation all in one item. Well done. I think you get an extra bonus if we're playing the Downers Grove home game. I think you get an extra bonus for 3 C's, and you get a 4th C in there, an extra word point. We're talking big trucks. Questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to any of these vehicle purchases? Questions from the council? Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, 2 things. One is I know that some of these may not be sold within our town, our village, but some of them can be. Is there any way that we can internally look for a way that we can go to our dealerships in town here and see if they could help us out? I know we constantly sit up here and we remind people, every one of us, shop local, you know.
It's because of the cooperatives, right?
Yes, in the state bid process, what we do is we've reached out to our local dealers and we've told them that we've encouraged them to go through the state bidding process because that continues to be the lowest price available. And of course, we'll entertain any pricing that they have as well. But we'd like for them to do that before the state bids come out as opposed to posting a number and then trying to beat it. So we will continue to work with them and look for opportunities, but we encourage them to participate in the state's bid process, which is open to all dealerships.
Well, I would just highly encourage you to do that, because to me it seems like we're preaching one thing, we do another. You know, those that are following us either on the rebroadcasts or live or in the audience now, it doesn't seem as transparent as we tried to be up here. It just, I don't know. Maybe there just has to be a better way. The other question I have, when we sell these, we're going to sell these used vehicles that we're replacing. That money that we recoup from the sale of them, whatever it could be, does that go back to offset these costs, or does that just go back into the general fund?
It goes into the equipment replacement fund.
Okay.
As part of the ins and outs of managing that fund. I believe there'll be a separate item where you authorize the disposal of the vehicles we're selling. We try to do that through a variety of means to maximize what we get for those vehicles.
Excellent. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions from the council on these items? Just pick up on Commissioner Durkin's comment. I was going to make the same statement or question about whether or not we had explored the opportunity to purchase the non-specialty vehicles locally, in particular the Ford F-150s or the 550s. No, that's a dump truck, sorry. The F-150s and the cargo van, which could be presumably purchased locally, but I assume as from past occasions in which we've asked this very question, that it was because we're trying to be as cost sensitive as possible in getting what is basically a commodity. Whether you buy the truck in Milwaukee or you buy it here, it's those kind of non-specialty vehicles. A truck's a truck, it's a truck. So we're trying to get the best price for it, and the cooperatives or the cooperation with other municipal conferences provide us the best price. And I know that we obviously very much have a policy of shop local, and all of the things being equal, we would greatly prefer to buy locally for a whole host of reasons, but I guess the challenge is that not necessarily all of the things being equal is the problem. So what we need to do is figure out, and I know you are speaking with them, but it's one of those things where we have to meet in the middle. They have to participate more so that we can give us the opportunity, and I know we do.
One of the things we learned a couple years ago, I see Mr. Betelov in the crowd, he may remember this, in exploring these opportunities with local dealerships, we found that there are dealerships that are fleet sales oriented, that are in the business of fleet sales, and some of them that are not, and a lot of our local dealers for various reasons have core competencies in other areas rather than fleet sales. And a lot of the low bid providers of these types of vehicles are in the fleet sales business for these types of vehicles. So we will continue to work with our local dealerships. They're valued members of our community. They're some of our #1 sales tax producers. So we will always reach out to them. We'll continue to do so.
Right, and the opportunities have to be there, and we obviously go after the most fiscally responsible opportunity. We prefer that to be here in Downers Grove, but it's not always the case. Commissioner Schnell?
We've given you this direction, many, not you personally, but the manager this direction over many years, and we've tried to work with some of the dealerships, and in actuality, many times they just can't beat the prices or even come close to the prices. And, you know, again, I think a little bit of leeway is okay, but thousands upon thousands is not. And I think that's what we've hit over the years. So
that's correct.
I don't think it's that you, not personally, but the village has not tried to reach out. It's just that they can't meet it because they're, as you said, they're not fleet-oriented dealerships. So.
Thank you. Brings us to 8J.
Yeah, it's consideration of an ordinance amending the 2012 budget. And here to present this item is our Finance Director, Judy Butney.
Good evening.
Good evening. I had to give Nan a break.
It's okay. We don't normally see you at this time of year.
Okay. As you know, each year the council approves a budget ordinance authorizing spending levels for each fund. When unforeseen circumstances occur that cause expense to exceed the budgeted levels, the village is required by law to pass an amendment to the budget. There are 3 funds requiring budget amendments in 2012. First is the sales tax rebate fund with an amendment of $60,000 due to greater than expected payouts based on the terms of approved rebate agreements. This $60,000 is offset by greater than budgeted sales tax revenues. The next 2 amendments are for the village's risk and health funds. Both of these funds are self-insured, meaning that the expenses are tracked on a claims paid basis, which is really unpredictable and the expenses can be lumpy. For the risks fund, we're requesting an amendment of $600,000, bringing the total budget to $2.47 million. For the health fund, we're requesting a budget amendment of $350,000 for a total amended budget of $6.64 million. It's important to note for the health fund that even with the greater than anticipated claims experience in 2012, total claims paid in 2012 are still less than 2010 levels by about $350,000 due to the change made to Blue Cross Blue Shield. Be happy to answer any questions.
I just want to add that in addition to reporting out the expense side and only the expenses that are higher than budgeted, we do have some good news. All the other funds came in at or below budgeted levels on the expense side. I think we have like 27 or 28 different funds. We also wanted to point out that the general fund did perform well. We did have some information in the packet on that. Expenses came in just slightly under budget, and revenues came in substantially over budget. That's a good news item. It performed better than expected, of approximately $2 million. So you heard about $1 million worth of expense amendments in health and risk fund, $2 million to the good in the general fund. It is important to note that the general fund supports the health and risk fund. And in 2014, the general fund will make contributions to those 2 funds to make up for this budget overrun. So it may appear at first glance that we have extra money. That is really not the case. It's very much closer to the actual budgeted amounts, especially when you consider that we have a total budget annually of over $100 million. So there have been some questions about that, and we certainly have some already identified long-term needs in the village that if we do ever have the benefit of having so-called extra money, which is not the case here, we have several identified needs that measured in the $1 million that we can talk about during long-range planning efforts.
Thank you for that addendum. Questions from the audience with respect to the proposed budget amendments? Questions from the council? Commissioner Schnell.
Just an observation. The fact that we are adding $60,000 to the sales tax rebate fund is actually really good news, because it means that the entities that we have sales tax rebate agreements with are doing much better than originally thought. So that is a really, really good thing that we have to make that amendment. It's not bad, it's really good. So thought I'd point that out.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, there's also another good news item that I believe the manager wanted me to make a comment of. I was hoping he would do it. He sounded a hell of a lot more educated on it. If you recall, when we had talked about the budget and long-range financial planning, one of our collective concerns was the deficit that's in our transportation fund. And one of the ideas that came about of the discussions we had through the many meetings was, since we are living in such a low interest rate environment today on our investments, that when the day did come and we exceeded a budgeted dollar amount, we would be able to make contributions over to the deficit, since it's really just an account, internal account. And that one of the good news items, in addition to what the manager had already reported out on, is that our investments have had such a great return that we are able to make a $17,000 contribution to that deficit. So we are addressing it. We did address it when we came up with the policy, but I just want to point that out, that through the hard work of our finance department under the leadership of Ms. Butney, you know, that every BIP that Steve was fighting for and evidently got has gotten us to the point where we're able to make this. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you for doing so. Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few observations. One thing, the telecom money that we were talking about, that's a one-time hit due to a true-up from the state. So this isn't it's like a one-time windfall. And I would suspect that, you know, for years I've been complaining, you know, everybody's got a cell phone and they got all this equipment, and yet our telecommunications tax revenues have been going down, and it just, I don't know, Dave will tell you, I griped about that all the time. It just made no sense to me, and finally it's come around to make sense. They got caught not collecting it, we got our share. So I would assume that from this point on we will be able to budget better our telecom taxes. You know, that we can expect more coming in. I hope that's the case. Another observation was basically the one-time hit from, or not hit, but contribution of community development. I think it's fabulous, you know, the work that they did, and it made me think that whenever we talk about core services, we're always talking about police, fire, public works, and yet a lot of the stuff that we wind up doing here has to do with land use and comprehensive planning and rezoning and all this stuff, and we never really refer to community development as a core service. So I think when you guys get together, you know, without me, or I'll be in the audience somewhere, but you had to review the core services and include community development. They've contributed quite a bit this year, and should economic times go bad in, you know, in the next few years or whatever, you know, community development will probably get hit with, you know, what have you done for me lately kind of a thing, and expect to take hits. We got to remember what happened here and include them in the good news process. So our land use is a core service as well. Let's see, I had something else here if I can get the... Well, it froze on me, so what am I going to do? Another. Those community development. Oh yes, our sales tax revenue is up. That's good news. You know, what we've been hearing recently in the public comments by various folks is the importance of retention and attraction of business. That should be a core service, and we don't talk much about that, but our increase in sales tax revenues, something else that should be considered as well. Also, some comments from, matter of fact, last week sitting here, sitting out there, while some folks were up here talking about things, the question came up about our transportation subsidy system and the funding for that. It was cut a few years ago. That was one. It was cut. It wasn't eliminated, but cut. And the question, the answers that were given by two members of the council would lead me to believe that we might have possible 3 votes here for restoring those cuts. And that's the transportation subsidy for seniors and people with disabilities. it's about, based on the amount of money that we took in the general fund, we could restore that funding 20 times if we had no other use for it. I think we should consider rather quickly. It only took us a couple months, only took council a couple months to determine to make the cuts. I think we should take advantage of the opportunity to restore those cuts to the seniors, to that particular program. And I realize that there's many other uses that money can be used for, but we have to remember that these were cuts. This isn't a new program. This is a restoration of a program to what it was. And I think it's time that we consider that. I would prefer that we would not wait until financial planning come the late spring, summer, whenever it actually occurs, because we're talking about 2012 money, waiting until just about the end of 2013 to discuss what we're going to do, what you're going to do in 2014. So I think it's something that we could discuss sooner rather than later. And we also would have, if we restored it rather quickly, you would have at least 6 months of actuals to deal with for future budgeting and consideration. So that's all I have. I think there's a lot of good news in the budget amendment, and I appreciate your listening to my comments. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner. I do look forward to financial planning, long-range financial planning, which will start relatively soon. And I certainly appreciate the reasoning behind considering that in isolation sooner. And there's certainly arguments to be made for and against that. Perhaps a more conservative approach would be to do it in a more comprehensive basis with all the various competing interests that one might consider in that context, and sort of see how it shapes out. And I also would guess that at this point in our fiscal year, probably haven't burned through what's currently in the budget for that anyway. So I doubt, unless somebody points out to me otherwise, that anyone's in risk of having something not available to them, at least until we get to long-range financial planning, because we're going to have a new council that's going to participate in that process. And I would not want to prejudge anything for those who may be participating in it that wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to do so. I think it's something, just personally, we should look at that on a more comprehensive basis and not in isolation. But I'm not saying we shouldn't look at it. I heard the same comments you did, so we'll see. Any other questions or comments on that topic or any other topic we were talking about?
Yeah.
And that ends all 10 items of tonight's first reading agenda, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. It's a long path through a lot of items that will be coming up for future council actions, so stay tuned for those. That brings us to the end of item 10 on our agenda. That brings us to the end of the 10 items, which were under item 8, and brings us to item 9, which is the mayor's report. And I do have a report tonight. Very quick background. You recall that a couple of years ago we had some very severe weather events that caused prolonged outages of electricity in our community, and that led to a very successful town hall meeting with senior executives of Commonwealth Edison. It was held over at the Park District Recreation Center, gave an opportunity for residents to interact with ComEd senior staff directly. Some very good improvements came out of that meeting. We continued to interact and engage with Commonwealth Edison for the balance of that year. You may recall, for those who were watching, that I was giving weekly, or at least every meeting, an update as to what the status was in terms of the progress that ComEd was making on their commitment to improve the reliability of electrical service within our community. Those updates were also included upon our website so that folks could follow along as to what was being done and what they could expect to happen within their neighborhood in terms of either tree trimming or improvements in actual infrastructure. And I would hazard to say that while we might not have gotten everything that we would like, there certainly were some measurable, demonstrable improvements throughout our community. We ended that year and began a new one with a second town hall meeting with Commonwealth executives. We did not have the same weather events in the following year, but I think that that meeting was just as important and also just as effective in terms of continuing and building upon the successes that we had achieved in working with Commonwealth Edison and advocating on behalf of our residents and our businesses for improved electrical service in our community. So successful that we ended the weekly, or every time we met, reports as to what our status was, although we have kept the community apprised on our website in terms of what we've done. But what I promised is that I would provide a quarterly report as to where things stood with our ongoing efforts. So this is the first of the next, I guess it's the first quarterly report, but it's the next in the series, if you will. This quarterly report has some very good news. ComEd has provided the village with its reliability improvement plans for 2013. 13 circuits within our community, and those are segments of Downers Grove, will see equipment upgrades or replacement, including 10.7 miles of new or refurbished underground cable and almost 1 mile of new overhead storm-resistant cable. And if you were at some of those meetings, at the 2 town hall meetings, representatives of Commonwealth Edison demonstrated what that storm-resistant cable looks like and why it, in fact, will stand up to extreme weather better than what was previously there. In addition to the equipment upgrades and replacement, which I'm really excited to see, because I know most residents, when they think of improved service, they think of, give me some new equipment, better equipment. We're going to be getting and seeing quite a bit of that. But in addition, ComEd will also continue to perform tree trimming in 17 circuits throughout our community. And this, of course, has the benefit of reducing what falls on the overhead wires that perhaps aren't as storm resistant as some of the new equipment. If you want to track what will be done and where it will be happening and when you can expect these efforts to be taking place, as we have done so in the past, the village will post this information plus additional information, including a map and a timeline, on the village's website. So hopefully the next quarterly report that I have the privilege of giving will be able to talk about what of these promised improvements will have actually taken place by that point in time. So that's, again, very good news, and want everyone to, once again, to underscore that your village council and village staff continue to advocate on behalf of our residents and our businesses to work with ComEd to see these sorts of improvements take place within our community. And that's the end of my report, and that brings us to item 10, which is the manager's report.
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11, attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have 2 items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance providing for an amendment to ordinance number 5232 in the Village of Downers Grove budget for fiscal year 2012, and an ordinance amending the fence provisions for non-residential uses in a residential district. That's all.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 12, councilmember reports and new business. As customary, we'll break it up into new business and reports, starting with new business. Do any of the members of the council have any items of new business? Any new business from any members of the council? Commissioner Rankin.
I'm sorry I didn't share this with all of you before, but it was just coming up listening to Mr. Schwimmer talking about railroad safety and the underpass and all of his ideas. And I just don't wonder if we should consider a task force for creating a new underpass. That's a great big goal, but I think sometimes that may be years beyond a successful result. So should we consider maybe creating some sort of like railroad crossing safety task force with volunteers from the community, maybe Mr. Schwimmer, maybe representatives from Metra? I know some of the accidents were based on choices of individuals, but there are still safety concerns, and I just wanted to put it out there that maybe that's something we should think about.
Like an ad hoc committee?
Yeah.
Made up residents?
Yep.
I think it's a good suggestion. What I would want to see first, just to better inform what that committee might look like and what it might be able to achieve, is what it is that our police department is already has in place with respect to grade crossing safety, experience, background issues, efforts, and so on and so forth, so that we can pick up on what's already been done. And then maybe when we look at that, we can see if there's something that could go further, because it might be a public education campaign. I don't know what it would look like, but I think that rather than, as we all know, rather than just sort of have an ad hoc committee that has an undefined topic, then we might want to find out what has been done, what is already in the works, and then what holes or gaps might there be that perhaps that task force can take on in a more defined manner.
I totally agree with you.
Could we also add to the mix, if indeed we're not going to be looking at an underpass or an overpass, what monies may be available from the state for different types of gates or more protection for pedestrians as far as keeping them from the actual tracks themselves, and whether or not there are monies available for that, whether or not there's grants for that, because that would be something that if indeed there's some funding somewhere that a committee could look at, but if there is no funding and there's no chance of getting those, then having recommendations to that effect would not, be able to move forward. So
I agree. I mean, his suggestion of the second train warning signal, I mean, if that is something that is...
Well, there's also gates, I think we talked about this.
Well, that they do have.
Well,
People
but we
pay
don't
attention
have
to
it.
We do.
Yeah, I mean, I had an opportunity this week to witness somebody who got tired of waiting for the train and actually walked across the tracks. I have never seen that in my life, and I was horrified. And I'll tell you, when confronted, she was nonchalant. So I mean, you're right. It's people have their own intentions, but yeah, I mean, whatever we could do to look at that.
There are, years ago, I think we looked at, there are gates that you can actually, that they have in Europe, that basically just block it out. And you could not, I guess if you were creative, you could probably get over them, but they would be very difficult to get over. So there are ways of protecting people from themselves, if you want to call it that, but they're expensive. And that's why I was asking if indeed there are ways, or if there's any funding from the state or from grants, federal grants, that would pay for things like that, particularly where communities have had accidents with death associated with it. So.
Well, before we commit any time or resources to this, why don't we first find out what we already know?
Right.
And then see if there is something that could be defined for further consideration as to whether or not it's something that we want to pursue, whether as an aside or as part of long-term planning or whatever. But I think
totally agree.
Let's figure out, let's just get some information first, but I appreciate the suggestion.
Quick question, sorry to throw you on the spot, Enza, but can we increase the fine for what's set by the state? So we could have a $5,000 fine?
Yes, we can.
That's one of the biggest things. Our police department's out there pretty regularly with plainclothes and uniformed officers to, monitor the gates, but they can't be there all day. If we start to talk about raising those fines, that looks at the commuters and the pedestrians rather than the folks that are trying to do something that we probably will never be able to solve. That's something that I think that we should at least add to the list or do, because that's a much bigger ticket than $250. Right. $250 to be on time for that big meeting downtown isn't as bad as a $5,000 fine. It's an extreme, I know, but that's where people money talks.
I can tell you from firsthand observations that the biggest deterrent is from the conductors themselves, because when they see someone cross the tracks, that
they don't let them on.
They don't let them on. So it's sort of like getting the speeding ticket. You're going to be late anyway, and you get the ticket.
Yeah. Well, everything we can do.
But so let's get some more information. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Anyone against more information?
No, and I brought this up before, having the 3 crossings or 4 crossings, if you take the Maple and have that on video, like Wooddale does.
Well, let's find out what might already be in the works or what's already been considered before we go eerily into the night.
Sorry to spring it, but it just, arrived when he was speaking.
Sorry. It's new business.
It's a workshop. We're allowed to. According to the mayor.
Any other guests? According to the rules. Any other items of new business from members of the council? Hearing no other items of new business, we'll go to council member reports. Commissioner Newstead.
Thank you, Mayor. This weekend in downtown Downers Grove, the annual Downtown Downers Grove Wedding Walk will take place on Sunday from 12 to 4 p.m. A couple of quick items. The event starts at Gatto's in the center of town and actually closes at the Tivoli Theater. There will be over 40 wedding vendors on display at all the different shops and stores and restaurants in downtown. There are some tickets still available. They're only $25 for the bride and 2 guests, which I think is a little bit extra from previous years. There's a lot of info available at www.dgbride.com. Lots of great giveaways and prizes as well. Also this Friday in our downtown, there's a brand new store opening up called Evelyn Jane Boutique at 1008 Curtis. Another great shop to add to all of the wonderful stores in downtown Downers Grove. So be sure to check out that new shop, and if you're getting married, or even if you're not, go to the wedding walk and buy some tickets. That's all I have tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rankin.
No report.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Not really a report, but, you know, sitting up here, we get a lot of emails. Some of them are complimentary, some of them with suggestions, some are complaints or look-intos, as you might say. And all this has to do with the folks that are sitting up here. There's meetings that occur at Park District and school boards, and I wore a tag tonight because before I came here I voted. There's early voting going on. Get educated and find out what's going on, what's on the ballot, learn about the candidates, and get out there and vote, because there's nothing more embarrassing than having very few people in a community vote, and then they come up to various meetings, to various boards, and they want to be heard. This is the way to be heard, so get out there and vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Durkin.
Ditto.
It's a workshop, you know. You can.
Well, Rich and I won't be here next week, but I do support the two agenda items that we'll be voting on as a council.
Thank you, Commissioner Schnell.
I have nothing.
All right, thank you. For my own part, a couple things. First of all, I just want to remind everyone that we have champions in Downers Grove. The Downers Grove South High Special Olympic basketball team won the state championship. So we have champions here in Downers Grove. They won first place in the Division 8 at the state tournament held at Illinois State University. In the semifinals, South High defeated Hope School 48-31 and Princeton 50-30 to win the championship. So we wanted to congratulate all the members of the team, which include Janine Drapick, Eddie Gonzalez, Charles Huddleston, Justin Jones, Anthony Murphy, Malik Nicholson, Angel O'Case, Michael Pichetti, Jose Rosario, Jalen Rose, Alan Rosette, and Daniel Wisdom. And also we want to congratulate Coach Kevin Ahrens, Jack Cannon, Michael McGinnis, and Arthur Trench, who also coached the team, and Brian Cato that serves as the manager. We invited the champs to come to Village Hall and receive our congratulations in person and a few minutes of celebrity fame. Due to their demanding media tour, they were unable to join us at a council meeting, but I did promise that we would congratulate them at one of our meetings, and also point out that the coach wanted me to share a message with everybody. And very much appreciated the invitation. So Kevin Ahrens, the coach of the Special Olympics basketball team at Downers Grove South, said, quote, "It truly was a magical year, and everything just fell into place. We compiled a brutal 21-6 record this season and finished with a state championship." I added brutal, that's not him. "This happened because the players were willing to work to their full potential every day and commit to the team-first concept. The team got better and better as the season went on, and we hit our peak at the state tournament. In the 2 games downstate, everyone played and contributed to the best of their ability, and this led to a true team victory." So congratulations to the champs. I don't know if we'll have NBA champs in our area anytime this year, but in Downers Grove, we have some champions. So congratulations to the entire team. Speaking of athletics, Commissioner Rankin, I was surprised you didn't mention that the Leicester School Fun Run, Running with the Leopards, which was unfortunately postponed due to weather last year, is being rescheduled. I believe it's coming up on
April 14th, I think.
April 14th, I assume. 8:45 in the morning. So here I thought I got out of a race, but they rescheduled it, so now I have to run it anyway. So we'll look forward to that. And then last, I just want to also echo what Commissioner Waldeck and others of my colleagues have said. A week from today, and I know many people have already early voted, but a week from today, there's a very important local election. It's the election that determines who will represent you on your village council, your school boards, your park districts, the township, and other areas that, in my opinion, affect us more on a day-to-day basis than any of the elected offices at the county, state, or certainly the federal level. But unfortunately, they get all the attention and they get all the people who come out and vote. There aren't a whole lot of things going on, unfortunately, that I think will incite and motivate many people to come out to the polls, which is why I think Commissioner Waldeck made his comment. The park district and the school board races are not as contested as, if contested at all, as they otherwise might be, but we have a contested village council race. And there are 6 people working very hard to educate you on who you may want to choose to represent you for the next 4 years in 3 of the seats sitting up here in this village council. They're all working very hard, so I think on their behalf, I would ask that all of you do what you can to learn as much as you can about those who seek to represent you, because as you heard tonight, we talked about a lot of very important things: stormwater, streets, roads, safety, police, fire, community service, community development, economic development. These are all things that impact us on a daily basis. And if you truly want to have a hand in improving your community, then please, we implore you, get educated and please exercise your right to vote, because especially in this election, I think because of the expectations of the turnout, every vote will matter. And I know the 6 people who are working very hard will greatly appreciate if you do cast your vote however you choose to cast it. And you have a whole, I think, week of early voting. We have early voting site here at Village Hall, at least through, I think, this Saturday. So please, educate yourself and exercise your right to vote. I have nothing further, so with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell? Aye. Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
That was an aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you and good night. Please remember to vote.